Hello. Now I am going to be doing my top three, but not in this video. The top three are pretty much the three things that I hate above everything else. But I've realised that there are quite a few, well, I say quite a few, I've got 7 here, that I left out that I think are worthy of inclusion. So with that in mind, here we go with including them. A short one, this one, because I can get straight to the point. The mere smell of vinegar makes me want to fucking puke, and I mean like big time, like projectile vomit. It always has, and it always will. I remember there was an incident, this is when I was still at school, and a school friend of mine came over, and he got rather pissed off that I wouldn't let him into the house until he'd finished his portion of chips that he had, because he'd put vinegar on them. Acting the slag in music videos is almost the norm for female pop stars these days, which is something that actually that could have gone on this list if I thought of it. But there is one person who does take it to new depths. Miley Cyrus has all the singing ability of, well, of her old man actually, and why she suddenly felt it necessary, as so many female pop singers do, to go from looking relatively okay, well, for someone her age anyway, and well, you know, realising they have no singing talent, so they go the obvious shortcut route of looking and acting the complete whore, and you know, suddenly that equates in a lot of record sales. I wonder if it would work for me. Speaking of which, I'm going to try a little experiment. Is this a sexy look? Now, I have a funny feeling I know the answer to that. It could be sexy, or it could look like I'm having a fucking stroke. Now, either way, it's not just me. Anybody who does looks like they're having a fucking stroke, and not having a stroke of something in particular either. So why she feels it necessary to do that in almost every photograph that's ever fucking taken of the talentless whore is beyond me. It's about as sexy as listening to your grandmother fart. With any luck, this one should be a short one. And by the way, yes, I can't be bothered to keep doing the multicoloured intros. That's why they've gone back to being black. I'm sure you probably figured that out for yourself, but you never know, there's probably somebody who don't know it. Anyway, the mere sight of anyone's feet is enough to utterly turn my stomach. I don't care if, you know, some tart bangs like the shithouse door when the plague's in town. If she puts her feet, especially if they're bare, anywhere near me, then it's going to turn me off like a light in a fucking storm. That's all I can say, because just thinking about this subject is making me feel fucking ill. It's almost enough to put me off my fag. is thinking, after that last one, I think I'm starting to get a bit of an idea as to why I've been single all this time. Anyway, the length of time that I have been single is nothing compared to the length of time anybody who's a fan of Japanese animation has been. But the chances are many of them are unaware of the concept of female. Japanese animation, anime, or whatever you want to call it, they have a number of things that you will straight away make it obvious that they are Japanese animation. You don't have to see the title to know. As soon as the animation starts and you take a look at someone's face, straight away it tells you, oh, okay, this is fucking Japanese animation. The characters all look identical. They all have that face that's not even remotely human, or at least they're not if they're young kids, or if they're women of any age. But if they're men, then they will look vaguely human until there is the inevitable ranting scene where one of them is shouting like fuck knows what, although it's usually the younger kids that do that. When they do, their mouths are like that, but their chin doesn't move 1 micrometer. On top of that, they always have ridiculously overly convoluted storylines that are almost impossible to follow. A lot of anime fans will say, oh no they're not, they're easy to follow, yeah, you just got to be a fan of it, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm not a fan of pretentious art wank, thank you very much. Then because you get the other Japanese animation, which is far, far worse, and of course I am referring to hentai. The kind of person who is a fan of hentai is the sort of person who goes on to sites like, say, Tumblr, because they're too scared to actually go to porn sites. And when they're there, instead of actually searching for photographs of real women, they go looking for hentai drawings, because they are more turned on by watching drawings of these Japanese animation characters that barely look human, usually with ridiculously oversized tits. And it's about as sexy as, sticking your knob in a bucket of diarrhea. But they do this by choice. Rather than actually looking at, the real thing. No, they much prefer to see drawings of it. What a fucking bunch of sad cunts. There's not exactly a huge number of occasions when British actors are used in American-made films or television programs, but it's an even rarer occasion when the British actors who are there are actually allowed to speak their language, our language, English, as opposed to the bastardised version of the language that the Americans use. And what annoys me most is the fact that these English actors will do it. I'm not talking like, crappy, unimpressive actors like Hugh Laurie, who even goes one stage further and doesn't just use American English but puts on the fucking accent. I dare say his accent is about as convincing to Americans as Dick Van Dyke's accent in Mary Poppins was convincing to us. But you get people like let's say Ian McKellen. In fact, I've picked a real one there for this example, in the X-Men. The person who is basically the head of the X-Men, who is played by old Johnny Pickles himself, Patrick Stewart. His name, if I can get the captions right, it'll come up here. His name is Charles Xavier. That is how that name is pronounced. Not that fucking American version, which even Ian McKellen himself uses in the film. I'm not going to lower myself to say it. You know the American pronunciation. It's only total fucking cunts say it like that. Well then again, Patrick Stewart in Star Trek The Next Generation. He's surrounded by a lot of people with the rank of lieutenant, but he never says that. Again, he uses the American bastardisation of it. And the thing is, he's meant to be a Frenchman, for fuck's sake. Only an American program would cast an Englishman to play a Frenchman. So if he's a Frenchman, he can use the French pronunciation, whatever that is. I haven't got a fucking clue what it is. I know the German one is Lieutenant, but that's it. Use that one then. Compromise. But no, every time they appear in any American-made thing, it has to be American English. I can only assume it's because, you know, if they use actual English, suddenly the Americans wouldn't be able to understand a fucking word of it. I mean, you are talking about the country that in some of its television programs has subtitles appearing on the television when people are speaking in English in the first fucking place. So I guess I shouldn't be at all surprised that this is considered necessary.
The heat is swelling in you now.
Oh, indeed it is. When I was, well, I forget how old I actually was when Return of the Jedi came out. 11, I think. So yeah, it was 83, and around this time I was a huge Star Wars fan. I hadn't met too many like big time Star Wars nerds, so I hadn't been put off the films like the nerdy fans started to put me off in like the mid to late 90s, and then George Lucas came along and finished the job. But yes, around 83 I was still a big Star Wars fan, and I was really looking forward to Return of the Jedi, or Revenge of the Jedi as we had been led to believe it would be called for years. And what did we get? We got a film which at the time was the biggest disappointment I had ever seen at the cinema. Admittedly I was only 11, but when you're 11 years old and it's a third film in a series that you had been a massive fan of for, well, since 78 when I first saw it, so I was only 6 then. But no, Return of the Jedi was just... where do we start? Okay, some of these I figured out later on in life, not at the time. First of all, there's the fact that a huge part of the story has absolutely nothing to do with the rebellion against the Empire. It's all this Jabba the Hutt bollocks. Now, as far as all the Jabba the Hutt guff goes, well, firstly there's Jabba the Hutt himself. George Lucas stated that he always wanted Jabba the Hutt to look that way, which is absolute bullshit. By that time, we had all seen the clip of Jabba the Hutt meeting Han Solo outside the Millennium Falcon that was cut from Star Wars, where Jabba the Hutt was some fat Irish bloke. And George Lucas stated that he was only there as like a stand-in, so that when it came to putting on the Hutt, the giant slug Jabba the Hutt, they would have a place to put it. Oh yes, well if that's the case, then why was the Irish bloke in a fucking costume? Why wouldn't he have just been standing there in jeans and t-shirt if he wasn't going to be seen like that anyway, and there was never any intention of it? Fucking bullshit. So that's bullshit one. Bullshit two regarding this thing is, again, if that was the case, then why did they make such a monumental fuck up of allowing Han Solo to walk behind him, hence them having to put that absolute bullshit part in the special edition where he apparently steps on him to walk behind him? Absolute fucking bullshit. So anyway, that's Jabba the Hutt. Absolute bollocks. Then later on, we get the ghastly fucking emotional scene where Luke and Leia are in the Ewok village. Luke asks Princess Leia if she remembers her real mother. Now, admittedly, this wasn't completely fucked up until Episode 3 came along, Revenge of the Sith. But anyway, so Luke asks Leia if she remembers her real mother. And Leia replies, just a little, she died when I was very young. Died when she was very young? She died when she'd barely been a minute out of the fucking womb. So we have that, and Leia then goes on to describe her in a bit. She says, oh, she was young, I think she says, kind, but sad. You were able to fucking deduce this after you'd just, been born for barely a minute. She was sad because she was in fucking labour. And the minute-old Princess Leia was able to, deduce this, was able to work out these, what these emotions meant when she was 1 minute old. And Luke Skywalker says to her, well, I have no memory of my mother. So obviously males in the Star Wars universe don't have as good memories as females, because Luke Skywalker was born all of like 30 seconds before Leia was. But Luke doesn't remember her at all, but Leia does. So yeah, that's just completely fucking bollocks up. Then there's the part when Luke tells Leia that she's his sister, to which Leia says, I know, somehow I've always known. So you always knew. So when Luke Skywalker rescued you from the Death Star and said, my name's Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you, you said, who? Well, if you always knew, how comes you didn't recognise the name? And if you always knew that Luke was your brother, then why did you kiss him in the way that you did on Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back whilst trying to make Han Solo jealous? That doesn't make someone jealous, that makes someone fucking ill. If Han had half a brain, he'd be thinking, hang on, she did that to her own fucking brother, she can fuck off. She can go and live in America or something where that sort of thing is, considered okay. So, yeah, that whole emotional bit was just total bullshit. Although, as I say, a lot of it was thanks to just how shit Revenge of the Sith was. Then we get to the big one. The Empire and Endor. I mean, okay, right, we all know that the Ewoks are fucking shit, so that's been done to death. But just how good are the Empire? Did they really deserve to survive at the end of this film? They are constructing a Death Star, and in order to protect it, they are building, or they have built, this enormous shield generator which can, is able to generate this shield to this thing up in orbit. Fuck knows how many 100 miles are up in orbit or whatever. And yet, when they built it, I can only assume they must have actually, you know, maybe checked the area to see if there were any civilizations around that might have been a threat, and yet they seem to have missed the entire Ewok civilization, even though they had a huge bloody great city within walking distance of the shield generator. But no, they missed that. That's point one. Point two, you are in this immensely dense jungle area. So what mode of transport do you use to get around? I know, let's use a mode of transport that travels at about 100 miles an hour and is also extremely fragile, so if it hits anything it's liable to explode. Fantastic idea. That's just the sort of thing you want to get around in a fucking dense jungle, innit? So you have that. Then you have Emperor Palpatine's fantastic battle strategy, which consists of risking the entire empire on, you know, in one battle. Firstly, although he let the rebellion know the location of the shield generator and the Death Star, he let them know the right place. So he put himself and the rest of the empire at maximum risk, because he told them exactly where to go instead of like leading them on a false trail. On top of that, he decided to keep the entire Imperial fleet within firing range, so that the attack, if it went wrong, would have completely wiped them out, which it did, despite what this fucking episode 7 that's coming up tells you. Then on top of that, the first Death Star was destroyed by a shot managing to hit a target area that was 2 meters wide. So the Empire thought, right, we're not going to make that mistake again. This time we'll make a target area that's about 50 kilometers wide. They'll never hit that. They seem to be forgetting it's not stormtroopers who are firing at them. And it goes on. When the Death Star is destroyed, it's in orbit of this planet, well, moon, but a moon that's inhabited anyway. Something that size exploding that close to the planet would send a huge amount of extremely large debris, basically bombarding the planet. Essentially, the amount of debris and the size of a lot of the debris would mean that that explosion would render Endor totally inhospitable, which would have wiped out the Ewoks. Now, if they kept that in mind and put that in the film, it would have made it a billion times better, because we would have seen those fucking things wiped out. There's another one I missed. The Super Star Destroyer, this enormous fucking great ship that's about, 100 times the size of a regular Star Destroyer. You would think that something like that is going to take an awful lot of firepower to bring it down. No. In fact, it takes 2 single-seat fighters. One comes along, fires a few shots into this enormous bloody great dome thing, and that explodes straight away. That's the shield generator. So the shield generator for this ship is so fucking fragile that a single-seat fighter can come along, fire a few shots at it, and bang, it goes up. So that's the shield gone. And then it turns out all they needed to do was then shoot into the bridge, destroy that, and boss, the ship's gone. It then crashes into the Death Star, which would set off an explosion so monumentally huge that would have destroyed the Death Star. Whereas in fact what you got was an unbelievably pathetic explosion when it plows into it. An explosion of that scale would have not only destroyed the Superstar Destroyer that crashed into it, it would have destroyed the Death Star, and it probably would have wiped out every other fucking ship that's around there. No, not this time. So it's just one fuck up after another. It's a fucking bullshit story that is written by some cunt who clearly just felt, right, I've got to tie it all up, I've got to bring it to an end, fuck it, that'll do. And that's all it was. So that's why I consider it the worst Star Wars film ever made, and one of the worst films ever made. I hate it more than I hate Phantom Menace. That's quite an achievement in itself, for a film to be more hateful than the Phantom Menace. It's vastly, worse than Sending the Clowns. It's worse than Revenge of the Sith. In fact, when you think about it, it's hard to work out why the Star Wars series is so popular at all. There have been 9 Star Wars films made, if you include the spin-offs. You've got the 6 regular films. You've got that shitty Clone Wars animated film, and you've got the 2 Ewok films that were made, Caravan of Courage. The other one was a straight-to-video release. I think it was called something like Battle of Endor or something like that, or Battle for Endor. So you've got 9 films made. Out of those 9 films, only 2 of them are any good. The rest are all absolute shite. Now, if a series of films is made where 7 of them are shit and 2 of them are good, that puts it on par with something like Police Academy or Nightmare on Elm Street. Just absolute shite. And when you think about it like that, you think, why the fuck is that film series so successful? It's just absolutely fucking mystifying. Maybe some prick can fucking answer it. There's no way anybody thought that this wasn't going to be included. The thing is, I've done why Frontier Developments are such a bunch of cunts to death. You've only got to look at, you could almost look at any one of my Elite Dangerous videos and you've got 175 of the fucking things to choose from, and at some point in all of them I'll give you a reason as to why Frontier Developments are a fucking bunch of wankers. They've conned us all as far as Elite Dangerous goes. Bearing in mind, Frontier Developments didn't exist when Elite was made. They also didn't exist when Frontier was made. So the only 2 games in the Elite Dangerous series that Frontier Developments have been responsible for are First Encounters and Elite Dangerous. Now, what do those 2 have in common? Oh yeah, they were both rush released, bugged, unfinished pieces of shit. So there is a bit of a trend. It does make you wonder just what any of their other games would be like. I have no intention of finding out, although I do have a horrible feeling I've already got one in one of the Roller Coaster Tycoon games. But I only got that because they were free on Origin or something. Anyway, so with regards to Elite Dangerous, they lied to us for 2 years about what was going to be in it. The huge uproar about the offline mode being cancelled. To butter us up over, getting shot at that, they said, oh, we'll give you 5 extra ships, so you're going to have 25, you're going to have 30 ships instead of the 25 that we promised. Well, here we are, 9 months later after the release, we still haven't even got 25, let alone 30, and now they're doing variations of existing ships. You've got 2 Diamondbacks, and at the next major update you're then going to have 2 Eagles. That's not individual ships. Now, some people who are going to stand up for Frontier Developments will say that in Elite you had 2 Cobras, the Mark 1 and the Mark 3, and that in Frontier you had two Eagles again. You had the Mark 1, I think there was the Mark 2. In fact, it might have been the Mark 2 or Mark 3. You also had other ships that were very similar to the Eagle. You had the Falcon, I think there was a Hawk, and I think there was a Kestrel. And to that I say, yeah, okay, that's true, but they were in the game from the start. They weren't, you know, added later on under the guise of we will give you, you know, a load more new ships and then give us those variations. All of the ships that were in Elite and Frontier and First Encounters for that matter were all there from the get-go. Only Elite Dangerous you know, didn't give you everything that was promised from the start. Far from it. And you know, by now supposedly complying with their promise of giving us 30 ships, what they are in fact doing is giving us a load of tiny little variants on existing ones and saying fuck it, that'll do. What else is missing? Passenger missions, which were, you know, a pretty standard feature in Frontier, in First Encounters. No, not here. Even though we've got a ship that's designed for carrying passengers, you can't actually do it. And then they say in their newsletters, oh, it looks like the Orca, which is the ship I'm referring to, is not very popular because not many people are flying it. Well, no. Because the reason for having it isn't in the game yet. But shock horror, they don't mention that bit. So, you know, they're almost trying to claim that, you know, it's a big mystery as to why the Orca isn't very popular. And when I was playing the game, I tried out the Orca, and it is a decent ship. It would be an extremely good ship if its purpose for being in the game was actually, you know, part of the game itself. No, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if it never was. And then there's the things like, you know, you having to pay for expansions to be able to do things like landing on planets, which was a standard feature in Frontier, it was a standard feature in First Encounters, it's a standard feature on almost every other you know, space exploration type game except the original Elite. And the only reason it wasn't in the original Elite was because that game was coded for a computer which had 32k of memory. They just couldn't do it. That excuse does not exist anymore. There's the fact that, you know, there's no spoken you know, audio communications between the ships, or, you know, your ship and the docking where it's like traffic control or whatever. And yet in games that were 15 years old, i.e. Freelancer, oh yeah, that happens all the time. And I mean, the list goes on and on. So then, to try and butter everybody up, they brought in new features which they hadn't mentioned at all in the Kickstarter, such as the power play feature, which is just, it's hateful. No one likes it, and you know, it's about as popular as Frontier developments are with me. And now we've got the close quarters combat coming, which is basically turning Elite Dangerous into Unreal Tournament. That was never mentioned in Kickstarter, and you know, it's just bullshit after bullshit, broken promises after broken promises with Frontier developments. Their support is atrocious. The forums are a fucking joke. Frontier developers monitor the forums like a fucking police state. If you say anything to criticise Frontier developments, the chances are your post will be removed, you'll probably get a warning and blah 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 blah. Consequently, the forums are full of brown-nosing fanboys, and they really are the fucking limit. And no matter how much Frontier Developments have pissed us all about, the brown nosers will still insist that the game's fantastic and everything Frontier Developments do is fantastic. And if you want proof of that, just go to any thread where they've released a patch that's fixing problems that were introduced as a result of the most recent major update. Because every time they have released a major update, they have completely broken the game. Old bugs that were dealt with come back. You're constantly disconnected from the servers and bloody fucking blah. It happens every time there's a new update. And so they do more of these patches, more of these hotfixes to fix the bugs that were gone and have now come back. And when they do that, it's just a stream of replies from brown nosers saying, "Oh, thank you Frontier Developments, you're so fucking wonderful." Well, no, you're not fucking wonderful. You shouldn't have fucked it up like that in the first place. And this all comes about as a result of them releasing the game unfinished. Those of us, and you know, as much as I hate to admit it nowadays, I was one of the people who was beta testing the game before it was released. And from, I think it was like beta 3.4, I think it might have been, or whatever. But anyway, from there through to the gamma versions, through to the initial release, nothing was changed. So if you were playing, you know, like the beta 3 version, and then played the gamma version, it was exactly the same. And then along came the release, and a lot of people, and I was one of them, was thinking, okay, this is now the final release, surely they'll add some new content to it as a result of it being a final release. No, the release day came, we downloaded the finished version, and it was absolutely identical to the gamma version. Nothing new had been put in whatsoever. It was months before a new feature was added, and I can't remember. I think it might have been wings. No, they added I think they added a few new ships before that. But it's just bullshit. You know, it's just this endless string of bullshit coming from Frontier Developments. And ever since the game, ever since Elite Dangerous went into probably around like beta 2, it's been endless bullshit from Frontier Developments. In fact, you could even say they've, where this game's concerned, they've been doing it for 3 years, because a lot of what they said in the Kickstarter program to try and get people to pay them to develop the game, a lot of that was pure bullshit, because they've not done a lot of stuff that they promised in there. Some have actually gone for good, like the promised offline solo mode, and it's a shining example of how to piss off your customer base and yet convince yourself that everything is fine, because you deliberately surround yourself with brown nosers who will say you're fucking wonderful even if you went round their house and shat in their mouth. And believe me, some of those brown nosers, like Tin Man, I would love to do that to that cunt. I'm a big fan of rugby union. It's a fast, very physical game, and it's played by proper hard men. The only protection they wear is a jockstrap, and the some of the front and second rows will wear like this very fairly soft padded cap, and that's it. I'm also a big fan of Aussie rules football. In fact, Aussie rules football is second only to cricket as being my favourite sport. Again, very fast paced, very physical. not only do they not wear any protection of any kind, but they are wearing these vests, you know, with completely sleeveless. They wear shorts that look like, you know, something that people wore in the 80s. That's it. I'm also a big fan of Gaelic football. Again, no protection worn. Again, very physical, very fast-paced. Hurling, okay, they do wear protection. They wear the face mask with good fucking reason, because, you know, the ball is the size of a cricket ball. It's harder than a cricket ball, and on top of that, the players are all armed with these fucking sticks and smash the ball fuck knows how hard. So yeah, you will need, you know, a face mask for that. That's the only protection they have, though. Then you get American football, a sport where all of the players wear enormous fucking great padding. Everyone knows the shoulder pads, but it goes all over the chest. They wear huge bloody great thigh pads. The jock strap, I imagine they probably wear like shin pads as well and everything else, and of course a fucking crash hat. They then play a sport that is less physical than any of those sports I've mentioned, and I'm tempted to include the fact that I mentioned cricket in that, and it is so monumentally slow that I think it's played in over 3 periods, and those periods have 10 minutes in each. I'm open to correction if that's the case. But despite that, a game will go on for about 3 hours. Because after each moment of play, which lasts 4 seconds, they then all have to fucking stand around and pose and all this fucking bullshit, and, you know, have everybody in the crowd cheering and, you know, doing that usual American style bollocks that, you know, you don't need me to fucking do an example, which is a good job, because I'm not going to allow myself to do that. And, you know, and they're standing there, oh, look at me, I'm fucking hard. And yet when you look at them out of all this padding and that, half of them look about as athletic as a darts player. I reckon you could probably get Michael van Gerwen and Raymond van Barneveld playing American football, no problem. I would say Phil Taylor, but he's a fucking wanker and half, that bloke, so, yeah, bollocks to him. So it's, you know, they've got all this massive protection for no reason whatsoever, because the physicality is nothing compared to rugby union or league, compared to Gaelic football, compared to Aussie rules football. The physicality is fuck all. And they get all these fucking breaks where they're just standing around posing and doing fuck all else, whereas in those other sports it's just carries on. You know, if you're injured, tough fucking shit, get someone to drag you off the fucking field and what have you. There was one Aussie rules game I was watching. It was Carlton were playing. I can't remember who they were playing, but anyway, it was Brendan Favola. Big name in Aussie rules, although he's now more of an infamous name. And he took a mark, it leapt up, and when he landed, he hyperextended his right knee, or his right leg at the knee. And, you know, you watch it and it's like, oh, fucking hell. And he went off. And at half time, one of the commentators was interviewing the manager of Carlton, and they were saying, oh, how's Fev, what's he up to? And the manager says, oh, he's in the changing room walking it off. That is a proper fucking hard man. Not this fucking, you know, oh, I've got to have my fucking crash out and my fucking pads and all this fucking bollocks. I think, I genuinely think I'm a closer representation of physical perfection than some American footballers I've seen. It's just fucking laughable, or it would be laughable if it wasn't so fucking pathetic. Can you imagine the outcry if there was a film made that glorified white supremacy? Say if it was a film praising the Ku Klux Klan, or praising Combat 18 or anything like that. The outcry would be unbelievable. But the trouble is, of course, that whilst blacks or Asians or Orientals or whatever ethnic minority would be quite right to be outraged by it, there is a quite sizable proportion of each of the those ethnic groups who claim to want racial equality, when in fact they make it very clear that that's not what they're after at all. That what they want is the same superiority that they claim the whites have always said they had. I mean, okay, the whites did look down on the blacks in particular, you know, in the days of the slave trade and that, which of course is a great British invention. It's one of many reasons why I am not a particularly patriotic Englishman. But yeah, every time the race card is played, it is never by a white person. Of course, the reason for it is that if a white person was to claim racism against him, it would never get anywhere. It's almost, well, I say almost, it's not almost, it is basically that blacks, Asians, Orientals, you know, you name it, they can get away with it. And no one proves this more than Spike Lee. Spike Lee is unquestionably the most racist director of films that has ever drawn breath. For racism, he makes Lenny Riefenstahl look like Steven Spielberg. You know, every single film he has done, and I must admit I can't remember too many off the top of my head. White Men Can't Jump, I think was one. But every film he has done is basically putting down white people. Not always directly, though he certainly doesn't stray from doing it directly. But it's just in the general context of his films. And he has got away with it for decades. And to give you an example, right? Well, no, it's not an example. Let's put it in the context. Imagine if somebody had made a Spike Lee film, but it was all white people, and they were speaking to each other in the same way that is done in his film between all of the black cast, which is pretty much everybody in all of his films, and they're speaking about, in this case it would be white people speaking about blacks the way that the blacks people speak about the whites in Spike Lee's films. Again, there would be an absolute outcry over it, and it would deserve it. But because Spike Lee is directing these films and it's black people putting down whites, not only does he get away with it, he gets accolades, he gets, you know, all these praise saying how fucking wonderful he is and all this bollocks. If you want genuine racial equality, you have to realise that racism cuts both ways. So open your eyes to racism towards whites, and if you want any proof of it existing, watch any Spike Lee film. The bloke is the biggest racist cunt to have ever walked this fucking earth. I'll just add that before anybody points out Adolf Hitler was as bad, yeah, maybe he was, but most of his hate was anti-religion, particularly the Jewish religion. Jews are not a race, they're a religion. Thankfully, this hemorrhoid of a fucking television program is no longer being made, although it does sometimes still get shown on television. Cash in the Attic. This is possibly the most patronising television program ever to be made, because it assumes from the outset that everyone watching it is stupid enough to actually believe what they are seeing. Firstly, you have this expert who values every single thing that is found at £50 to £80 every fucking time. As you maybe, okay, occasionally you'll find something that's worth 80 to 120, but they're the only valuations he ever gives. But the thing that is just so unbearably annoying about it, they usually go to places like, you know, rural Herefordshire, or, you know, Hertfordshire, or, you know, in parts of London like, you know, Kensington, Chelsea, Sloane Square, you know, all those sort of areas. So these people have, like, you know, 4 or 5 bedroom houses in these sorts of locations. They can then afford to furnish and decorate it with antiques of all kinds, you know, antique furniture, antique paintings, you name it, it's there. And yet suddenly these people desperately need to raise 400 quid to buy a fucking lawnmower. Just how fucking stupid do you have to be? Right, well, for the sake of my spleen, that's, I think we'll do for the amendments. That's definitely my list exhausted. In fact, 2 of those, American football and Cash in the Attic, were completely spur of the moment things. So the next video we'll do the top 3. These are the ones that really get the bile. I can hardly wait.